What, this one?
This is
Bath.
It is Bath.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
it might be.
Bath.
Yes. So that's Abbey.
Yep. So this was a special request.
You're going to paint it again?
I'll paint it again very, very quickly.
Oh my God.
Right, so we've got, I'm making this the last week on this particular project, the Weather and Skies project. Next week is still May, but I thought we'd start a new project, and that's animals and birds, so that's a request by one of the groups. So doing animals. If that floats your boat, if you fancy trying that, that's the next project I'll tackle. So making this, so I've got basically 1 week left in May. I'm not going to be running a class on, I think it's the 20th of June. So that leaves 3 weeks in June, 2 before and 1 after. So, and then having a break for a couple of months over summer and back in September.
So when do we finish?
So I think it's probably about the 27th of June, whatever's the last week in June.
So not the 20th,
Not the 20th.
There is the one after.
Yeah, that's the one after. Yeah. I hadn't really realised that it was like my 1 week break was so close to the end. I didn't really realise till recently. But, anyway, so I'll do a little bit of this. So I started to pre-mix a few colours. So I've got this which I'll need to mix more of this kind of beigey grey or purpley grey. So what I've done is just sketched out roughly. I'm not going to tackle the actual outfit, it's more the reflections. Not that I wouldn't like to, but it just take me a while to do that. I think when I painted the painting that Naomi that's probably about 3 hours work standing there. And it was nice, I did do a painting of kind of that section years and years ago, and this was quite nice because it was absolutely chucking it down that day, but there was like a cabin bit here that I could stand under and paint. So that worked out well. What I've done here is I've just sketched out with a bit of pastel pencil, and at the moment I've just made that an oval shape for the umbrella, but once I've got that shape I can then sort of start to flatten little bits off, kind of flatten out the edges. In some ways that might be the easiest way to draw that. Just try and get an oval and then just see which bits you need to, just gives you a bit of a guide, and then from there I can then see where these bits will come. I hope you get a sort of fairly pleasing shape. I'll start with a little bit of background. So what I tend to do is just get one colour down to represent that whole area of shadow, and then I'll work into that while the paint is still wet. I'm pretty sure that's how I worked when I painted the original one. So really some blue, a little bit of crimson and some brown to make it. And it should be quicker to mix with a knife, I think. Just to get just a colour that I can work into, a kind of base colour. This is oil painting medium, so it's a mixture of thinners and oil, and it just helps the paint flow a little bit. So I'm just using a tiny bit of that. Let's try that. That's a bit too dark, so a bit lighter. Yeah, that'll be right, I think, to start with. So just kind of work that into the background. And I'll go over the top of here as well, just so that the umbrella stands out. I can kind of work into this figure here. That really comes right the way down to here, and up a little bit just in there. The figure herself, let's go to a slightly smaller brush, and she's mostly in shadow, so I'm going to use a mixture of brown and blue to make a shadow colour, or dark colour. So So ultramarine blue and burnt umber, and it gets me a colour that's virtually black, just a tiny bit of red as well. And to start with, I think I'll just paint her as a silhouette, and then, whoops, picked up some white. I think a weight is on this leg, so this one's just going to make slightly blurry. There. And just a tiny bit lighter underneath here, so just a tiny bit of yellow mixed in with that. I think with oils, what I tend to do is with darker areas, sometimes I make them dark and then paint a little bit of lighter colour into them. So it's pretty much the opposite of how I would treat watercolours. So shadows there. The top I'll leave like that. I can always put some light colour in there. And this bit would be a hand holding the umbrella, just make that a little bit lighter. Could just slightly, using a bit of an orangey colour, work into where her face should be. Like that bit. And then painting her reflection, dark things tend to reflect just a tiny bit lighter. So I think where her feet are, it's still quite dark, but then it gets lighter, and I guess that's all the other light coming in. So I should just go to a slightly different brush. Blue into that. It wants to be quite dark there, doesn't it? Keep it dark there. And then just lighten up a little bit as it comes out. Centre. Just wipe those. This lighter area, where really this area, obviously this is reflecting the abbey, this bit's really just reflecting the sky. So we get seeing a little bit of colour through the slabs, but it's slightly, so this being light, this is reflecting slightly darker. So really the reflection kind of averages the tones out a little bit. So I've got a lightish pinky colour here that I'll use for that. So that's going to be all right. What I quite often do when I'm looking at lights and darks is just really screw my eyes up, and that helps to judge the tones. So just put that in there. So I'm painting, I've not thinned the paint much, but I'm really scrubbing it into the board. And that way it's strong colour, but it's not too thick, so I can't paint more paint into that. That's up to about there, I think. Be a little bit careful that I don't pick too much up. Whoops. Yeah, so that's kind of blocking most of it in, or most of the area is going to cover. I guess I could put a little bit up here. A little bit of shadow there. And if anything, fairly light. And then it's then kind of working into these areas. So let's go for another brush again, so keep cleaning. Some of this, so where the people are, well, I haven't put the people themselves, they're reflections, that's a bit too dark. Let's go for that. They're reflecting down places. A little bit like that. We've also got the yellow sandstone of the Abbey, giving a bit of a creamy, yellowy glow. So I've got a colour called yellow ochre, which I'm mixing with a bit of brown, and that should work there. Perhaps a little bit of white, or the lighter colour. So I can work that in there, and it blends in a little bit, which is nice. Perhaps go a little bit lighter. Work around some of the reflections of the people. Where the Abbey window is reflecting, it goes a bit darker. So just go a little bit darker there. So that would be about here. Then a little bit of the sandstone, dry thinner brush. Just want to be careful not to make that too light. I want it so that I can just about see a difference without having too much contrast. And that sort of tapers out there. Seems a little bit darker there. A tiny bit darker just in there. And then just want to soften some of the edges here. Some of these wet bits are sort of coming through a little bit. This particular flagstone seems darker, so I'll make that one darker, which is about here. And that's going up a little bit. And then this one is, to me, a little bit more reddy, browny colour. So I'll add a little bit of browny red to that. Yellowy. So it's kind of working through a little bit like that. And here that breaks out a little bit. It's just kind of following the shapes that I can see. And slightly softening one or two edges. So once I've kind of worked into there, most of that seems fairly light. There's a little bit, tiny bit darker there, which is perhaps about there. Slight variations. Next thing is looking at where the individual flagstones just kind of break up. So in some of them I can see quite dark edges, like here and here and here and here, and then other bits it's reflecting light from the sky. So it's a mixture of dark edges and light edges. So just get some nice sharp edges. So I need a better brush. So I'll do it with that. So this is a new kind of nylon brush. Yeah, so that's a little bit darker than that. And we've got an edge coming that way. And as I pick up wet paint, I tend to just wipe it off with a bit of rag, and then just get another mix. Edges here and here. So going back in space, like that. So with the perspective, these horizontal lines will get closer together as I go back in space. The edges will fan out like that. So where I was standing here, that would be vertical, but over here they'll be angled this way and that way. So it's just something to be looking for. So over here, will be something a bit like that. And this side, they'll kind of angle out. That's a bit too heavy, but they'll basically angle out that way. I'll do perhaps one down here. Quite nice, broken up little bits of flagstone down the front here. And then these other ones are really catching the light, so a lighter colour. Here I can have some lighter ones, lighter edges. That's a little bit on the side. Sometimes I would use if I want to get a really sharp line, I can use a straight edge like that. That can give a nice sharp line. And then perhaps just going through a little bit, going through the reflection places. So that's kind of the pavement. And the actual rain itself, on the photograph you can just about see a couple of tiny dots, but to me it doesn't really convey the idea of rain particularly well. So what I tend to do is, I don't know if I tend to just get a really thin brush and just put perhaps a few lighter lines across, particularly like going over a dark area, but some slightly broken lines. And then going over the lighter areas, slightly darker marks. You have to be a bit careful not to overdo it and make it look too like a sort of graphic illustration, but sometimes that can give an impression of. That's the sort of thing I try and use, the ideas I use to work into that.
Easy peasy. Of course.
But when I painted that scene, it was about 3 or 4 hours working. Okay, the nice thing about the rain is that the light doesn't change too much, so if you stay dry, you've got a fairly consistent light.
Oh, something positive to say about
Nice
rain.
nice evening, a great day. So, Anybody want to ask anything?
Can you just remind me
Yeah.
of the colours you use for the light rain, the shiny
Well,
rain
this bit.
on the ground, yeah.
Yeah, they're all pretty much a similar colour. It's kind of a bit of burnt umber I've used, and ultramarine blue, and then a little bit of a crimsony red. I've used magenta, but alizarin crimson would be fine. And it's getting like a slightly pinky brown. And then I've then adjusted that as I've gone, added a bit more blue for the bluer, colder areas, and a bit more kind of yellows and oranges mixed in for the warmer bits.
Basically every colour.
Yeah, it usually is, yeah. Okay. Yep. Right. Okay. Good luck. Look, I have got some photos, sort of rainy scenes in this.
Yeah,
one. I really wanted to use anything. So there's a few bits in there. Can you have a look? Yep. Sure.